Good morning. Let us be very quiet for a moment, just enough to remember why we are here. This is not a scolding of prayer. It is a gentle correction of the object of prayer. In other words, we are not throwing away prayer, we are restoring it to its original substance. Be still and know that I am God. That verse does not say, be anxious and tell God what God forgot. It says, be still and know. And if we do nothing else in this hour but turn from telling to knowing, from describing a need to recognizing the presence, we will have done more than enough for a lifetime. Here is the pattern interrupt, stated plainly so there is no confusion. Praying for money keeps your attention on form. The moment you pray for money, you train your own consciousness to believe supply is external, outside your being, moving toward you sometime. And the result is inevitable. You keep building an inner world of waiting, of hoping, of bargaining. Don't you know that when you face east to look for the sunrise while the sun is already high within you, you are merely shadow boxing your own light? Your Father knoweth what things ye have need of before ye ask him. If that is true, and it is, then the asking that begs for effects is the very thing that blinds us to what already is. Now, I don't know how this will unfold for you. I don't know the forms by which it will appear, whether a position, a commission, a contract, a quiet cancellation of a bill, or an unexpected idea that pays its own way. That hasn't unfolded to me about you yet. But I do know the principle, and the principle works when it takes root. Money isn't supply. I is supply. I embody supply. Supply is the indwelling presence, and forms are the last step of its appearing. Seek conscious contact with the cause, and the effect appears added unto without strain. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Not earned by anxiety, added by grace. So let us make this very practical. Today, before you check a balance, before you send another pleading email, sit 3 minutes, 5 minutes if you can bear it. Sit until the heart drops its bargaining and the mind gives up its list. No words are necessary. But if words come, let them be these. Father, thou art the life of me. I and the Father are one. And wait not for a voice, not for a picture, but for a softness, a quiet recognition, an inner assurance that says, I am here. When that touch comes, even faintly, rise and go about your affairs. Watch what appears. It may be a phone call. It may be a correction in your own plan. It may be the sudden release of an old fear, but it will be the effect of cause realized. Don't try to make it happen. Live it. Exemplify it. The moment you stop begging God for effects and begin seeking conscious contact with the cause, prayer changes. You are moved from the fever of getting to the rest of being. In him we live and move and have our being. We do not bring God to the need. We bring our consciousness to God, and the need dissolves in the light of what already is. If you will do this simply, faithfully, you will find that the forms you require will come in due season, and you will be less impressed with money because you will have touched supply. Now, if we are to continue honestly, we must say out loud what most of us have quietly believed, that money is supply, that a new client is supply, that an offer, a contract, a raise, an investor is supply. And in the human scene, those are the appearances that we have called supply, and they are useful. They turn on lights, they pay rent, they send children to school. But hear me, those are forms. Those are the last step of something else already going on. Forms are not the substance. The things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. Don't you know that if you pluck a fruit and call the fruit tree, You will always be anxious for the next fruit, but if you understand tree as the life that thrusts up sap and limb and leaf, you can let the fruit come in its season. Here is the principle stated plainly, so plainly that it will either offend you or free you. Money isn't supply. I is supply. I embody supply. Supply is the indwelling presence, God as the substance, life, and law of every true form. In other words, there is an invisible cause that, when realized, appears outwardly as whatever is fitting for that moment. Sometimes dollars, sometimes ideas, sometimes a gentle closing of a door that had you trapped, sometimes a new door you hadn't imagined. The form is the photograph. The presence is the life. We are not denying the photograph. We are refusing to worship it. Do not confuse this with impracticality. Scripture never says, ignore your bread. It says, give us this day our daily bread, and then immediately, thy kingdom come. Order. Cause first, then effect. Take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink, not because food, drink, housing are unimportant, but because their appearing is the last step of an inner recognition. Your Father knoweth what things ye have need of before ye ask him. Before you put mouth to prayer, the substance is already present as the eye of your being. If you will put the need in its right place as an effect, you will find the weight moving off your shoulders. The moment you look to form as cause, the whole burden falls on you. Time, chance, exchange rates, markets, moods, and you become a supplicant at the altar of appearances. Let me be as simple as I can. The presence within you is the living law of fulfillment. It is the shepherd that makes I shall not want a present fact, not a future promise, a present fact. When, even for a breath, you touch that inner union, you are at one with every spiritual idea necessary to your day, every contact, every right place, every righteous adjustment. Then, as naturally as the tide obeys the moon, the scene begins to rearrange. Perhaps your phone rings. Perhaps your thought clears, and you see a step that was plain all along. Perhaps the bill that threatened you becomes a non-event. The outer is the echo of the inner. Do not begin with the echo. And yes, I know the protest that rises, but I must have money by Friday. I don't know how Friday will be answered for you. That hasn't unfolded to me about you yet. I only know the law of spirit, and it has never failed me when I have let it be the law. Sit first, acknowledge first, I and the Father are one. Recognize that the source is not coming to you, it is flowing as you. Then move in whatever light you have. Pay what you can pay, do what you can do honestly, but keep your attention anchored in the cause. You will discover that what you call supply was often a particular form you preferred, and the grace of God had a better form in mind. Here is the controversy, and let us not soften it. As long as you pray to a form, you consent to be ruled by form. You come under its seasons, its tyrannies, its shortage and surplus, its news cycles and interest rates, that is cosmic law, action and reaction, sowing and reaping at the level of appearances. The law came by Moses. It is a harsh tutor when you make it your God. But when you touch the indwelling presence, you step through a door. You do not throw away integrity. You do not discard prudence. But you come under another government, grace and truth. We will speak of that next. For now, take this into your quiet. Forms are the last step. Supply is the I that I am. When you know that, you will stop begging the shadows and begin living with the light that casts them. Then, without strain, the forms you need will appear added, not achieved. Now let us be very plain about this word we have used, cosmic law. Call it the ledger of the human scene. Action and reaction, sowing and reaping at the level of appearances. It measures and returns. It says, you did this, you get that, you failed here, you pay there. It runs on deserve and earn, compete and fear. And it keeps very accurate books. If you believe yourself to be a separate self among other separate selves, trading power with powers outside, you live under that accountant. In other words, you are always adding, subtracting, and worrying the balance. That is why when you think money is supply, your whole life becomes arithmetic, budgeting, hope, calculating dread, carrying the one of tomorrow's rent and borrowing from the two of next week's grocery. Now watch what happens when prayer remains inside that framework. Father, if you will get me this contract, I will be better. Give me the rent by Friday, and I promise to be faithful. Let that investor say yes, and I will tithe. Bargaining, panic, self-condemnation, endless calculations of lack. You are still praying to the ledger. You are trying to negotiate a better rate with the bookkeeper of karma. You count your sins and promise credits. You count your merits and expect deposits. And the mind is busy, busy, busy. How to angle, how to hurry, how to impress, how to sell. Do you see that it is all the same hypnotism? The law came by Moses, and it is a stern and faithful teacher when you remain at the level of law. It will give you exactly what you believe in. Wages. The wages of sin is death. In other words, the wage of separation is fear, shortage, and the tired heart. But hear me. Grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. You are only under cosmic law until you achieve the realization of grace. Grace is not a doctrine. Grace is not a pass to ignore your duties. Grace is presence felt. It is the experienced I am with you always. In the moment of conscious union, the arithmetic stops. There is a hush where accusation used to be, neither do I condemn thee, go and sin no more. In that light, penalties dissolve because the belief in separation that incurred them dissolved. I watched a man once, this is not theory, who sat under the weight of a tax penalty and the heavier weight of shame. He had mismanaged, yes, at the level of appearances. He came to me bargaining with God in his pocket, promises, plans, ulcer, and we did nothing clever. We sat, we acknowledged, Father, I and thou are one. Thou art the life of me. We waited until the fever of getting cooled, until he could not name it. A warmth at the center said, I am here. In the days that followed, nothing spectacular in the papers, but very natural unfoldments. An honest accountant found a credit they had missed. A payment plan was offered without his prompting. A dormant client called with a project he was uniquely fitted to serve. He paid what he could pay, and the rest was met as it came, without the diet of fear. What happened? Grace annulled the penalty in consciousness, and then the scene reshaped to match the annulment. Do not confuse this with license. You will still do whatever is honest. You will answer the mail. You will keep your word as light leads. But the basis has shifted. You are no longer pushing levers to get God to release funds. You are not apologizing to a deity you think you have disappointed. You are abiding in the fact of oneness until fear gives way to trust, and then moving from that trust, perfect love casteth out fear. When fear is out, the bookkeeper leaves the room. In other words, the ledger closes because the premise of separation is no longer believed. If you would taste this even a sip turn from the spreadsheet of pleading to the silence of presence, 3 minutes, be still and know that I am God, not coming to you, God, as your very life. Sit until some small assurance rises, the inner nod that says, I. That is the threshold. Step across it, and you will find that asking for money has lost its power over you. You will find ideas, right activity, right timing, appearing as grace added unto. We will speak more of this, but for now let the principle take root. You are only under cosmic law until you achieve the realization of grace. Touch the presence and watch how quietly the sentence is lifted. Let us look now at this word that has tangled so many of us asking. At the human level, there is nothing wrong with saying, could you pass the salt? That is simple and honest. But metaphysical begging, God, give me this amount by Friday, send me that investor, is a different animal. It begins by declaring God over there and supply out there, and yourself here empty. That is separation. Your Father knoweth what things ye have need of before ye ask him. If that is true, and it is, then the asking that pleads with a distant deity is not prayer. It is fear talking to its own image. Ask, and it shall be given you. Is not a license to harass heaven. It is an invitation to open the door of inner awareness. Knock at the heart's door, not at the vault of forms. Bring the appearance versus reality lens right to your desk. An overdue bill is an appearance, a photograph of yesterday's thoughts and arrangements. It is not the living tree, it is fruit already formed. The things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. In other words, what your senses report lack, deadlines, comparisons, is a mental image, not the substance of being. When you start your prayer from that photograph and beg it to change, you have already agreed that the photograph is power. And then you become its worshiper, checking it, fearing it, flattering it. My kingdom is not of this world. You see, reality is not in the bill. Reality is in the I that I am. God is the life of you, the law of your being. Here is the hidden cost of repeated requesting without realization. It prints a passport in your own consciousness that reads, mortal, dependent, at risk. Every time you beg, you rehearse a self apart from God. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. One mind prays to God, the other prays to mammon, and the stomach keeps the minutes. And the result is inevitable. The scene echoes your premise. A prayer that starts from separation tends to reproduce separation. You ask from not enough, and the world obliges with delay. You ask from guilt, and you find penalties. You ask from competition, and rivals appear. It is not that God withholds. It is that you have crowned a false center and then called its fruits results. Ye cannot serve God and mammon. Choose your center. Then what is prayer, if not requesting? Prayer is realization. Prayer is communion. Prayer is conscious oneness felt, even if faintly. Abide in me, and I in you, for without me ye can do nothing. Begin there. Sit, not to inform God, but to be informed by God. Be still, and know that I am God. Not God approaching, God as your very life now. Let the inner word be as simple as breath. I and the Father are one. If no words arise, let consent itself be your prayer. In that quiet, the sense of two begins to soften, and with it, fear loosens its grip. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. That is not an invoice. It is an identity. I do not say you will never speak a request again. Words will come, but you will find that they come after union, not instead of it. The tone will change from begging to agreement. Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. You will move from trying to get to letting grace reveal what already is. Do your part honestly. Answer the mail. Pay what you can. Take the step shown, but make oneness your starting point. Don't try. Live it. Exemplify it. If you will shift the axis of your prayer from out there to in here, from form to presence, you will discover that asking becomes listening, and listening becomes guidance, and guidance becomes provision, appearing added unto. We will take this further, but let the principle sink in now. Begin in oneness, and the world will have to come into line with what you are knowing. Now we come to the heart of the matter. If prayer is realization, what are we to do? First, stop trying to make something happen. Don't try, live it, exemplify it. But you cannot exemplify what you have not touched. So enter the closet within. Enter into thy closet. And when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret. Shut the door on outcomes, on clocks, on the mind's arithmetic. And just for these minutes, refuse to inform God about forms. You are not convincing, you are consenting. Be still and know that I am God. Not out there, God, as the eye of your being. The aim is not words. The aim is not intensity. In other words, this is not about a louder voice or a more desperate plea. The aim is conscious contact, the felt sense, however slight, of the indwelling presence. Sit as you are, and let the inner phrase be simple, almost like a bell struck softly and allowed to ring. I and the Father are one, if even that feels like too much. Let a wordless yes be your prayer. Breathe, not as a technique to manipulate God, but as a way of noticing that life is already given. If thought rushes in, let it pass. If fear parades its deadlines, let them pass. You are not sending petitions to a throne. You are recognizing a fact. In Him we live and move and have our being. How will you know when contact is made? Not by fireworks. Often it is a hush, a softening. The sense of two becomes less convincing. The room inside, which was noisy, gets roomy. Anxiety that had its hands on your throat relaxes its grip. Sometimes a quiet gratitude rises before a single form has appeared like the master at the tomb. Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. And yet Lazarus was still inside, at least to the eye. That gratitude is not positive thinking. It is the echo of union. When it comes, however faintly, you need not force it into words. Rest there. 1 minute in that light does more than hours of anxious formulas. The still small voice is enough, but I do not know how long it will be for you today. I don't know that hasn't unfolded to me about you yet. It may be 30 seconds before a meeting. It may be 3 minutes before you open the mail. It may be that you touch it and then lose it and then touch it again 10 times before lunch. Pray without ceasing does not mean reciting without ceasing. It means returning often to the realization of oneness. Begin the day in that way. And return when fear speaks. Return when elation speaks too, lest you start to worship the forms. Every return is a recentering in truth. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That is not a demand. It is an identity revealed. Now, hear this as plainly as I can give it. The object of these minutes is not to get an answer. The object is union. The goal of prayer is conscious union, not convincing God to send an outcome. The very moment you quietly know I, you are at one with ideas that you could never have reasoned out right activity, right place, right timing. Guidance does not always arrive as sentences. It may be a natural inclination to call a person you had not thought of, a piece about paying this bill first and letting that one wait a week, a clarity about discontinuing a project that has eaten your life without feeding your soul. My sheep hear my voice, and you will recognize it by its tone. Never intimidation, never bargain, always a rightness without strain. Do not be surprised if, after such sitting, you feel led to do something very ordinary, sweep the floor, answer a letter you have avoided, walk around the block. Grace hides in ordinaries, and as you follow light in the small, the larger opens without clangor. All these things shall be added unto you. Added, not wrestled from life. You will watch supply appear in the way of ideas that carry their own provision, an introduction that contains its own yes, a task that seems to pay its own way as you move with it, a release from an obligation that never belonged to you to begin with. The scene will conform because the root has been watered. Practice simply, many times a day, 3 minutes, if that is all you can rest. Touch the presence and let it touch you back. If no touch seems to come, do not condemn yourself. Sit again later. Never hesitate to say, I don't know, and keep the appointment anyway. The principle must take root in you. Don't try. Live it. Exemplify it. Begin with union. Out of that, right ideas flower, and with right ideas, right activity, right timing, and the appearing of what the world calls supply. In a moment we will smile at this together in another way, because the earth has already taught it to us. When the root is nourished, fruit arrives without strain. You do not tug on oranges, you rest in the life of the tree. And the invisible supply, already going on, makes itself visible in due season. Let the earth teach us now, because sometimes the soil says it better than I can. Stand before an orange tree. You do not shout at it. You do not hold up last year's empty basket and bargain. You do not fast and plead and then tug on the branches to force fruit out of season. You water, you tend. You let the sun do what the sun does and the root do what the root does. You prune what is withered. You loosen the soil, and then you wait with a quiet expectancy born of knowing that life is already going on beneath the bark. You smile at those oranges, yes, but only after the invisible supply has done its secret work. In other words, you cooperate with a principle you cannot see, and the appearing of fruit becomes as natural as morning. Now bring that right home. Supply is not manufactured by pressure. Forms are not coaxed by spiritual volume. Consider the lilies, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. The orange tree is not anxious, it is rooted. The sap rises because it is its nature to rise. The blossom opens because it is its nature to open. The fruit hangs heavy in its season because the law of the tree is fulfillment. So with you, presence is the root. Ideas are the first tender shoots. The blossom you can begin to sense even before there is anything to taste. Forms, money, opportunities, adjustments, releases are fruit in due season. I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. Can you hear it? Abiding, not straining. Rootedness, not racket. Do you see the shift of burden? When you make the fruit your God, you live in the orchard with a stopwatch, rebuking branches, resenting your neighbor's harvest, calculating the market price of oranges that aren't even formed. That is why the heart grows tired. Take no thought for your life. What ye shall eat, your Father knoweth. Not because eating does not matter, but because eating is the last step. When you tend the root, when you sit until union is felt, however faintly the sap of inspiration rises of itself, a right idea comes small, almost ordinary, and with it a quiet courage to take the first step. A blossom appears as a willingness to call someone you had not thought of, to release an obligation that was never yours, to accept an invitation that had been on your desk a week. And then without pushing, the form ripens, a bill is adjusted, a client appears, a door closes that frees your time, a new door opens that pays its own way. First the blade, then the ear, after that the full corn in the ear. Order, principle. I don't know what fruit will hang on your branch this month. That hasn't unfolded to me about you yet, but I do know this. Invisible supply is already going on. Life does not begin when you see dollars. Life is already moving as the eye of your being. When you touch that, behold, the kingdom of God is within you, you stop yelling at branches. You tend the root. How? Not by anxious asking, not by reciting needs to the soil. You tend the root by abiding by silent consent, by the inner yes that says, I and the Father are one. You tend it by pruning what is withered habits of fear, bargains with mammon, the comparison that sours your tongue. You loosen the soil by simple acts of honesty, by doing the next right thing that grace brings to light. And you let the sun do what the sun does. You let grace warm the hidden places until sap rises again. This is the relief, and it is practical. When the root is nourished, presence, the fruit appears, forms without strain. In due season we shall reap if we faint not. Your task is not to make a season. Your task is to keep the root watered. So the question before us is no longer, how do I get more oranges by Friday? The question is, how do I tend the root daily without slipping back into anxious asking? We will take that up now, because as your identity shifts from seeker of fruit to embodiment of the vine, you will find that the orchard itself changes tone. You will stop scolding trees, and you will begin to live as one quietly, fruitfully, naturally, because the invisible supply has become your conscious home. Now we must take the step that changes everything, not the scenery first, but the one who is looking, identity. We are either mortal man, a seeker among seekers, bargaining with forms and fearing tomorrow, or we are the child of God, heir of God and joint heir with Christ, already included in the household, already at the table. There isn't a third category. If I believe myself to be a self apart, trying to get life to fund me, I inherit all the anxieties of a separated life. But if I accept what the Master accepted, I and my Father are one, then I stand in an entirely different place. Here is the principle spoken starkly so we can hear it. Money isn't supply. I is supply. I embody supply. Not the human, I do not make that mistake. Not the personal self that boasts and collapses. The I, that is supply, is the presence, the Christ of you, the life of God showing itself as your being. Do not let that sentence puff the ego, let it dissolve the ego. I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. That is embodiment. It is not adding divine language to a frightened personality. It is yielding personal sense, the proud one, the fearful one, the hustling one, to the indwelling presence that says quietly, I am. When that yielding happens, even a little, you will notice that the room inside gets bigger. The old center loosens, and you begin to feel the practicality of what we are saying. If the source is within, if the vine is the life of the branch, then you cannot be outside of your good. You may not see yet how it will appear. I don't know that about your particular day. It hasn't unfolded to me. But you cannot be outside of the life that will appear as what you need in due season. Watch what this does to decisions. The seeker self chases, flatters, underprices, overpromises, joins the shout and the scramble, and then prays to be kept safe in the scramble. The embodied self listens. It accepts only what carries the feel of rightness, of peace. It refuses what asks you to fracture your integrity, to earn $1. It stops buying opportunities with fear. My sheep hear my voice, and when identity is in Christ, the voice becomes clear in the quiet places. You will find yourself saying no without anger and yes without panic. You will notice that what you fear shrinks to the size of an appearance, and what you trust enlarges to the size of a universe. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. If that is so, you need not pry the door open. You need only walk where you belong. I watched a woman who had lived years as a seeker, bright, gifted, always hustling. She came to the end of her rope not for lack of clients, but for lack of soul. She sat, as we have been saying, until the fever cooled. One morning the prayer was as bare as this: Father, I and thou are one. That was all. No petition, no plan. In the days that followed, she turned down a contract that would have paid well, but required her to deny the very truth she loved. The seeker in her panicked. The Christ in her was quiet. 2 weeks later, a small invitation appeared, smaller money on the surface, but completely aligned. That single right activity unfolded into a stream of work that required no hustle and paid its own way as it moved. What changed? Not the market, identity. Supply appeared as experience because she was no longer a beggar at the gate. She was a member of the household, moving about her father's business. When identity shifts, your relation to work changes. Work ceases to be a treadmill to fund a separated life and becomes the form your inner life takes on any given day, your prayer walking in shoes. Talent is no longer a commodity to be sold to the highest bidder. It is the way God shows himself as you. Opportunity stops being a race. You do not try to be someone else's branch. You consent to be the branch you are, and you let the sap rise as you cease ye from man, whose breath is in his nostrils. Cease, in other words, from trusting personality, either your own or another's, as source. Trust the I. You will find a clean freedom there, and this touches that word that troubles so many: competition. In the old identity, you breathe it in the way a city breathes: exhaust, comparison, hurry, fear that someone else's gain is your loss. In the new, there is an ease that does not come from laziness, but from law, spiritual law. Each seed unfolds after its kind. Each branch bears its fruit. There is no collision in principle. When you know I is supply, you do not push others off a stage. You find there is a stage in you and an audience prepared by grace. We will speak more plainly of that in a moment. For now, rest the point in your heart. Supply appears as experience when you shift identity from seeker to embodiment. Live from I, and the forms you need will be added naturally, timely, with that quiet fitness that tells you the root has been tended and the life is doing what life always does: unfold. Now let me say the thing plain and without edges. There is no competition in spirit, only individual unfoldment. Competition is a belief in limited good. It assumes a pie on a table somewhere outside of you, and the fastest hands get the biggest slice. That picture has hypnotized the race. It belongs to the premise that supply is external and that personalities must fight to get their share. But the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. If fullness is the fact, where is the lack? Lack is in the belief of separation. It is the arithmetic of a mind that worships forms. Ye cannot serve God and mammon. Choose your center. When you know supply is within, you stop bargaining with surfaces. You begin listening within for the way your branch is to bear fruit in this hour. What does this do to the fear that someone will take your place, your idea, your audience? It dissolves it. What is yours by unfoldment. No one can occupy your place because no one else has your identity. A man's gift maketh room for him. That is not pep talk. That is a principle. Your room is not on a crowded stage out there. Your room is the space your gift opens from within when you abide in I. In other words, your right activity, your message, your timing are not prizes won from competitors. They are the way grace clothes itself as you. And if a thing can be taken from you by another, either it was never yours in the first place, or you are being released to a truer measure. Let me give you a picture you can try on. Two people make the same product. Let us say they both bake bread. On paper, they are competitors. They even share a street. One lives inside the old premise, so he watches the other's prices and hours like a weather report. He lengthens his day when she lengthens hers, shouts when she shouts, discounts when she discounts, and prays to beat her to the customers. He is exhausted, and his bread tastes like it. The other turns inward first, not to get advantage, but to abide. Be still, and know that I am God. In that quiet, she hears the nudge. Not more hours, different hours, not every loaf, but a few loaves that carry a story heritage grains, a blessing for families with children who cannot tolerate the usual. She follows that light. A school calls. A small cafe finds her. Her prices are honest, her rhythm humane, and her bread tastes like joy. Same product? At the level of appearances, yes, but in truth, different unfoldment. No collision in principle. Or take two people writing the same kind of book, selling the same kind of service, offering the same workshop on the same weekend. One tries to capture the other's words, techniques, audience, the old oxygen of fear. The other sits until he can feel the hush that says, I am. Out of that, a fresh note arises, a niche he had not noticed, a tone that is his, a timing that keeps him from forcing the bud. He begins with 20 in the room and thinks it is failure until grace shows him that in those 20 is the seed of the next 3 years of work. Despise not the day of small things. And by the time the rival has burned out trading tricks, this one is simply walking his path. He has not taken anything. He has received what was his in the way of peace. Here is the liberation. When the fear of competition relaxes, you can hear, my sheep hear my voice. And what you hear are right ideas, right steps, right timing. They are often ordinary. Call this person, stop that subscription, adjust your hours, write the letter you have postponed, rest this afternoon, bake fewer loaves with better flour. But the ordinary is how spirit moves a life. You cannot hear that guidance over the clamor of rivalry. Rivalry drowns the still small voice. On the other hand, even a minute of union cuts through the static. He leadeth me beside the still waters, he restoreth my soul. Restored, you are not anxious to defend a turf, you have none to defend. You have an unfoldment to consent to. Do not try to convince a rival of this. Don't try. Live it. Exemplify it. Sit until you feel the inner yes again, and then move with the step that arises. If you catch yourself scanning the horizon to see what the others are doing, cease ye from man, whose breath is in his nostrils, and turn within, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. The next rightness will appear. I don't know what it will be for you today that hasn't unfolded to me yet, but I do know the principle. Supply as I appears as your individual way. And in that appearing, there is no battle. When you know supply is within, you stop quarreling for air. You begin to breathe from the life that is already yours, and you will find that your place, your idea, your right activity stand where they have always stood in God, revealed in due season as you listen. Now let us take up the matter of time, because even after the heart has bowed and the inner yes is heard, the mind still glances at the calendar and says, but when? Hear this gently. In spirit, contact is immediate. In appearance, form often ripens by stages. Conception first, then birth. You may feel union in the moment, truly feel it, and yet the outer scene may not move at once. Do not mistake that delay for absence. The vision is yet for an appointed time. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. In other words, when the root is watered, life has already begun moving. The seed is not idle because you cannot hear it cracking open. If you will allow me the boldness of the metaphor, prayer conceives. The instant you touch presence, something living is sown in consciousness, an idea, a rightness, an order. It may come to you as quiet peace where panic was, as clarity where you had 3 plans and no wisdom, as a single name to call or a small door that opens of itself. Those are signs of conception. Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. The answer often first appears as changed atmosphere. The stomach loosens. The mind stops bargaining. Gratitude rises without a reason. Do not ignore those as only feelings. Those are the first movements of life. Now, I don't know how long your gestation will be in any particular case. I don't know, that hasn't unfolded to me about you. For one, the form may appear this afternoon. The adjustment comes, the client writes, the refund posts. For another, the right idea is conceived today and takes 3 months to grow into right activity, and that activity pays its own way as it matures. For some, it is years, a book, a vocation, the replanting of a life. When the fullness of the time was come, God sent forth his Son, fullness of time. Not hurry, not delay rightness. Let me speak to discouragement, because it tries to creep in when the visible lags. The absence of immediate money is not the absence of supply. If you have touched union and can say honestly, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, and you feel the panic ease, then supply has begun its appearing. It may be pressing through as a fresh sense of priorities, what to release, what to keep. It may be a letter written in integrity to arrange terms, and when you send it from peace, the grace in you meets the grace in another, and the form adjusts. It may be the still small word to discontinue a losing project, and when you obey, time and energy flow back as though someone opened a river. These are not delays. These are midwives. What do you do in the interval? You remain in grace. You do not go back to anxious manipulation, no tugging at branches, no loud confessions intended to pry open the womb. Be still and know that I am God. Sit daily until that knowing is felt again, even for a minute. Keep the root watered. Move with the ordinary guidance, give and answer the mail. Pay what you can in good faith, repair what is yours to repair, release what is not. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it. Waiting in grace is not passivity. It is active consent to divine order. You are not on pause. You are being led. And watch for the tender signs that say the life is continuing. Peace replacing panic, clarity replacing confusion, a right idea arriving that carries its own willingness, a door that opens without a shove. Mary had the truest posture of this. Be it unto me according to thy word. And then she kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. Ponder. Do not pry. If worry returns, return to union. If elation gushes at a small sign and tries to crown the form as source, return to union again. My times are in thy hand. In that resting place, timing ceases to be an enemy and becomes a servant. Let the principle stand clear in you. Contact with presence conceives right experience. The form appears in due season without forcing. First the blade, then the ear, after that the full corn in the ear. Conception first, then birth. Your task is not to hasten seasons, but to keep consent alive. Don't try. Live it. Exemplify it. Remain within grace, and you will find that life's outward steps meet you on the path at the appointed hour, and what appears bears the unmistakable mark of spirit-fitted, sufficient, and free from the aftertaste of strain. Now let us have a working test. Something so simple that you can do it before the ink dries on your worry. 3 minutes. Wherever you are, kitchen table, office chair, parked car, stop the request mid-sentence. Father, please, and stop. Shut the door of words. Enter into thy closet and shut thy door. Do not finish the plea. Become still, not by force, but by consent. Let the breath find its own rhythm. Say nothing for a moment. Be still and know that I am God. Not God afar, not a banker of the skies, God as the eye of your being. In that first minute, release the picture. See if you can let the image of money, the check, the due date, the person you think holds the key, let them float like leaves in a stream and pass out of view. You are not casting them away forever. You are taking your hands off the branches. In other words, you are ceasing to pray to a form. If a sentence wants to rise, let it be simple, not an affirmation to convince God, but an acknowledgement, I and the Father are one. Or even quieter, I rest there. If fear tries to tell you how late it is, answer only with stillness. Take no thought, your Father knoweth. You are not thinking your way to safety. You are consenting to reality. In the second minute, acknowledge presence, not with a speech, just a turning. In him we live and move and have our being. Let that be true here, now. Feel for the tone that is not bargaining. Often it is a softening inside, a loosening around the eyes, a warmth in the chest, or a hush that says, two is giving way to one. Do not manufacture it. Don't try. Live it. Exemplify it by letting silence do its work. If no feeling comes, do not strain. Sit anyway. My grace is sufficient for thee. Sufficiency is a presence, not a number. In the third minute, listen, not out there within. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. You are not waiting for a paragraph. You are noticing the first rightness that presents itself, often ordinary and quiet. Call this person. Cancel that meeting. Pay this small bill now and write in honesty about the other. Take a walk around the block. Put the unsound project down. Open the email you've avoided. Mend the hinge. You will know it because it carries peace and no aftertaste of strain. My sheep hear my voice. If there is no nudge today, end with simple gratitude. Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. Then go about your next honest duty. Return later. Practice builds capacity. I don't know how it will feel to you in the beginning. I don't know that hasn't unfolded to me about your way. For some, the hush comes immediately. For others, it takes a week of these turns before the mind unclenches. Do not measure. Pray without ceasing is not endless talking. It is returning morning, noon, evening, 3 minutes at a time until abiding becomes your native air. And do not make a technique of this for getting. You are not tugging at branches with new tools. You are tending the root with consent. If on a given try the mind won't quiet, bless the attempt and try again later. The very willingness is part of the healing. You will know it is working because the next step will surface by itself, and when you take it, something in the scene will quietly adjust. Not always money first. Sometimes it is a refund you had forgotten, a release from a useless expense, a client who is already looking for exactly what you do, a letter answered in favor, an energy returned because you laid down a draining obligation. Sometimes it is simply the peace that lets you sleep, and then tomorrow's step rises clear. First the blade, then the ear, after that the full corn in the ear. Let the order be what it is. Try it daily, and do not announce it to anyone. Let the fruit speak. Keep a light touch. Notice the small obediences and their quiet providence. This is the quickest proof we have. The turn from requesting forms to abiding in presence until guidance comes. Do this, and you will find that right ideas appear, and with right ideas, right activity that pays its own way as it moves. We will speak of that in a moment. For now, make the turn. 3 minutes. Stop mid-plea, abide, listen, and then take the practical step grace puts before you, the root is watered. The life will show itself. Grace does not make you passive. It makes you guided. My yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Easy does not mean idle. It means fitted activity arising from presence, not panic. When the root is watered, life does not sit on the porch staring at the sky. It moves in its own order. In other words, contact gives birth to steps, and the steps are not guesses. They appear as right ideas, and right ideas come with their own provision wrapped inside them. Here is the pattern I have watched and tried again and again. Presence, then idea, then contact, then transaction. The supply rides on the back of the right activity. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Added how? As the form of an idea lived out. After the hush, sometimes during it, you will notice a small, definite leading. It will not shout. It will be plain enough to do today. A woman sits her 3 minutes and finds herself thinking of one person she has delayed calling, not the flashiest prospect, simply the next true one. She calls without a sales pitch, with the ease of one who is not trying to wrestle a form into being. They talk. By the end of the day, there is a modest piece of work on the calendar and a deposit that more than covers the week's need. Presence, idea, contact, transaction. Not magic, order. A craftsman abides and hears, not work harder, but change the offer. He simplifies his menu from 7 custom packages to 2, 1 honest entry point and 1 deeper engagement. He posts the change and lets it be. Within 48 hours, 3 inquiries arrive, not because he pushed, but because the clarity did the work. The idea paid its own way. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. Another hears, apologize. He doesn't like that one, but he obeys. He writes to a former client he had brushed off under pressure and makes it right with no agenda. The client thanks him, no business mentioned. 2 weeks later, she recommends him unasked to someone else. The new work is clean, timely, and adequately funded. Can you see? Right activity carries its own train of provision. You are not dragging freight cars by hand. Sometimes the step is a boundary. Raise the price to the honest figure, or stop offering what you cannot do with integrity, or close on Thursdays. In the old premise, those sound like suicide. In presence, they are conservation of life. Doors you cannot afford to keep open slam quietly, and doors you had not noticed unbolt. Expenses drop, energy returns. The day fits the soul again. That, too, is supply appearing. And sometimes the step is outwardly small. Apply for 1 role, not 20. Send 1 letter, not a blast. Walk down the street and introduce yourself to the cafe owner you've passed for a year. A man did just that, no portfolio under his arm. Just an honest hello, born of union, not need. He left with nothing but a pleasant conversation and thought, well, I suppose I imagined that. 3 days later, the owner called. The new menu needed names. Could he write them? He did. That lettering walked itself into a season of steady work. The idea that paid its own way arrived as a nudge. The provision traveled with it. I don't know what today's step will be for you. I don't know that hasn't unfolded to me about your hour. But I do know the signature of right activity. It carries peace at the front end and no aftertaste of strain at the back. It does not require you to borrow from tomorrow's strength to fund today's motion. It does not tempt you to abandon integrity to make numbers work. It feels like my burden is light, not because it is easy in the sense of lazy, but because it is yours. Now keep this straight in your heart. We are not adding motion to win favor. We are not performing to get God to notice. We are moving as the form grace takes today. Faith without works is indeed dead, but works apart from presence are the old treadmill dressed up in Scripture. So we begin in union and allow the work to rise from that. If there is no idea, wait. If there is one, do it as prayer walking in shoes, not as a bargain with heaven. And here is where many slip, and I have slipped with them, tasting that ideas bring provision. We rush to use God for outcomes, techniques to pry open fruits, formulas to extract money. The minute we do, the hush is gone and the burden is heavy again. We will have to speak of this honestly, because it is subtle and it robs prayer of grace. For now, mark the principle without turning it into a lever. Supply commonly appears as a right idea and right activity that carries its own provision. Sit first, listen, move with what you hear. Let the idea pay its way as it moves, and let gratitude, not grasping, be the atmosphere of your doing. Now here is a warning said in love, because I have stepped into the trap and found my shoe stuck. The moment you take prayer, the holiest act of union, and turn it into a method to extract results, you have walked out from grace and under cosmic law again. The hush goes. The burden returns. You feel yourself measuring minutes and merits. Ye cannot serve God and mammon. In other words, you cannot make God the path to mammon and keep the sweetness of God. The law came by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. You are only under cosmic law until you achieve the realization of grace. Technique is law. Communion is grace. If I sit to meditate in order to attract a client or hurry a check, I have begun in separation and I will reap separation. I may even get the form, because sowing and reaping can be a very efficient machine manipulation, pressure, merit, ledger. But pay attention to the aftertaste. The form comes wearing a weight. It costs peace. It asks for hours I do not have or integrity I cannot spare. That is not grace. That is the old engine dressed in sacred words. Grace does not arrive under duress. Grace appears as what is fitted. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. Recenter now. God's gift is not things. God's gift is himself. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. When you seek presence, you receive the kingdom, and all these things shall be added unto you. Added, not wrestled, not pride. The things are not the object. They are the clothing truth puts on for a day to meet a human need. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. To make money the point of prayer is to place an idol between you and I. I can't tell you how it will come for you. I don't know, that hasn't unfolded to me about your hour. I only know the principle, and I have watched it unfold in lives enough to speak quietly. When love for God, for truth itself, becomes the motive, forms arrange themselves with a rightness you could not have calculated. The order is presence, then idea, then step, then provision, as naturally as fruit after blossom. If you reverse it, provision first, then perhaps a little presence on the side you have left the garden for the marketplace. Let me confess with you for our learning. A man began the 3-minute turn, and in his first week, an old invoice was paid unexpectedly. He was relieved and immediately set about doing the practice to force more. The peace vanished. The inbox went silent. He was angry with himself and with God. When he came, I said, "Sit, say nothing." He did. In the quiet, he found only one prayer. Create in me a clean heart, O God, no petition, no bargaining. The next morning, not a check, but a nudge. Apologized to a client he had hurried and slighted. He obeyed. No transaction followed, only a restoration of honesty. 2 days later, a referral came from that very client, work fitted to him, adequately funded, with no aftertaste of strain. Can you see? Love of truth first, supply as byproduct. The safeguard is simple and searching. Love God for God's sake. Begin your prayer where the Master began. Hallowed be thy name. Let that washing clear the motive. Not my will, but thine be done. When you feel yourself reaching for a lever, stop and confess it. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Don't try. Live it. Exemplify it by letting go of the form in favor of the one. If a right idea comes, do it with gratitude, not grasping. If none comes, abide. That abiding is already provision in seed. If I be lifted up, will draw all men unto me. Lift the I, not the need. Keep yourselves from idols. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Treasure the presence, and you will find that the heart rests, the ear opens, and in due season the forms that belong to you appear without the tax of fear. The law will always reward clever technique with a coin and a chain. Grace rewards communion with life, and life brings its own sufficiency along. When prayer becomes a technique for getting, it loses grace. Keep prayer as communion and realization, and you will discover that I is supply, and all these things follow like fruit on a tended tree. Let us bring it to its simple, living core. We began by loosening your grip on effects on dollars and due dates, and we have turned you to the cause. Prayer changes the moment you stop begging for forms and begin consenting to presence. Forms are the last step. Supply is the indwelling I that unfolds outwardly as whatever is needed when it is needed. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Added, not wrung from the branches. Money isn't supply. I is supply. I embody supply. When that is utilized, the scene adjusts, sometimes swiftly, sometimes by stages, but always with the signature of grace. Fitted, sufficient, and free of the aftertaste of strain. So here is the before and after as plainly as I can say it. Before, asking for money as if money were life, bargaining with heaven, measuring merit in minutes, living under cosmic law and its ledgers. After touching presence, which is the substance, resting in oneness, receiving right ideas, walking the next clean step, watching provision clothe the idea in due season. I and my Father are one. In that union, the old sentence yields to grace. You are only under cosmic law until you achieve the realization of grace. Move out from law into grace, and forms follow like fruit after blossom. Now, if today you try and fail, if the mind chatters through your 3 minutes, if you reach again for a lever, if fear pulls you to count coins and skip the closet, return gently. No scolding. A just man falleth 7 times and riseth up again. Each honest contact alters consciousness. Nobody comes to this well and returns precisely as they came. Something of the old hypnosis is washed away. We all, with open face, beholding as in a glass the glory of the Lord, are changed from glory to glory. Even a single breath of realized oneness has a way of staying with you, softening the next hour, brightening the next step. Don't try. Live it. Exemplify it a minute at a time. Do not take this to mean neglect of human duty. Grace is not an escape hatch. It is order. Pay what you can in good faith. Write the letter you have postponed. Make the call without performance, without begging. Do the work that is yours today, not as servitude to form, but as the form your prayer takes in this hour. Owe no man anything to love one another. Render honesty, render kindness, render clarity, but thou shalt have no other gods before me. Refuse to worship the checkbook. Refuse to define yourself by the calendar. Let integrity be your coin and presence your treasury. And do not preach this. Live it. If it does not come easy to your tongue, keep it in your heart until it is flesh of your flesh and bone of your bone. Let your life be the sermon. Enter into thy closet and shut thy door. Sit daily until you can feel the union, even for a moment, and then go out and take the next ordinary step from that stillness. If you are asked, tell the truth you have lived, not the theory you admire. Let the fruit speak. By their fruits ye shall know them. This is the quiet charge. Touch presence first, every morning, every need, every plan, and then live from that contact. Watch what appears. You will find that right ideas come, right activity rises, and forms arrange themselves in season. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. Tend the root, keep the consent alive, and you will see supply appear as naturally as fruit on a tended tree.